Hello and welcome to another edition of the 20 by 20 series from It's Just Me, hosted by Brent Fox. Obviously on the job this morning, taking a little break, and I want to make sure that I'm able to kind of do the breakdown of these particular fights. So without further ado, here we go. All right. So the first matchup that I'll get into is Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. Now, this particular matchup, to me, in my opinion, is probably going to be one of the closer matchups in the fight. In the whole fight card, excuse me. So, I'm going to go ahead and just go over what Sam Noakes actually does well. Now, Sam Noakes is an orthodox fighter from Britain, and basically, he is more or less a boxer puncher. So what that basically means is that he's able to box, position himself position himself well to set up attacks, but he also has a very good amount of punching power. I've watched two fights on Sam Noakes, one of which was, I think it was Ryan Walsh. Okay. So even though Ryan Walsh was an older fighter, he was a switch hitter, which meant that he would switch to southpaw, and Abdullah Mason is a southpaw. So it kind of gives some idea of what he would do to someone in the southpaw stance, which is good information. And then he fought another guy named Balaz, and I think this was one of his more recent fights. And basically that fight was him just basically breaking the other guy's will. Now, the result was that Balaz had broken his hand, but honestly, he had lost the will to fight. And then the broken hand was probably a way to escape the fight. What he did well in that Ryan Walsh fight was this. He was able, when Walsh was actually switching over from orthodox to southpaw, he was able to effectively land a nice overhand right, and then he also landed a devastating left hook. And there was another fight that he actually had that I watched. I forgot the opponent's name, but he delivered a blistering body attack. So that particular item is something that I would probably watch out for, especially in this particular fight. So I think that Noakes, I think that his ability to box is probably underestimated in this matchup. And guys, just because you haven't heard of this gentleman doesn't mean that he isn't good. All right. Actually, Sam Noakes is a very good fundamental fighter. Like, he's not really flashy, but what he does is actually very effective. He has a good, strong jab. He has a nice right hand. He has a devastating left hook. His uppercuts are pretty good. Now, what I will say, as far as an advantage or disadvantage for him is, even though I did see some improvement fight to fight with this, Sam Noakes is relatively flat-footed. So I think Abdullah Mason would be able to take advantage of that. But having said that, he cannot get into a firefight with this guy. Abdullah Mason cannot get into a firefight with him. If Sam Noakes is able to get in and have him engage in like an inside brawl, that's to his advantage. Okay, so what the game plan for Sam Noakes would probably be would go something like this. Of course, you're going to start off boxing. You're going to get a feel for your opponent. Once you actually are able to get a feel for your opponent, see how he reacts, then you may start doing things like use your strong jab to actually get inside and start working the body. If Abdullah Mason engages with that, you see how long you can actually stay in there, because that's to your advantage if you're Sam Noakes. If you're fighting inside and it's a slugfest, that goes to Sam Noakes. So what I would do is I would actually just, I would use my strong jab to get inside. Sam Noakes doesn't have great head movement. He does block punches effectively, but in some cases, he's not hard to miss. But he does block punches very well on the contrary. So I would probably just jab and block and then work my way in and then see if I can get Abdullah Mason to exchange. Now, what that basically is, or what that basically is going to have to entail is, if Sam Noakes is able to get his left foot, because he's an orthodox fighter, outside of Abdullah Mason's right foot, then he can probably control the tempo and the angles, and the angles that he's actually throwing the punches from. And you know, it may be a good strategy to be able to have that foot outside. That way you can easily escape any type of counterattacks as well. I also think that if Noakes is able to have Abdullah Mason try to come in and attack him, he can use his strong jab to kind of keep him at bay and set him up for a big right hand. So those particular strategies would probably be the most effective. But I think that, again, if Abdullah Mason starts engaging in back and forth, then that's to Sam Noakes' advantage. Now, we'll talk about Abdullah Mason. Abdullah Mason is a Cleveland, Ohio native, southpaw fighter, which means that, of course, his left hand is going to be his power hand. If you're orthodox, your right hand is going to be your power hand. So he is a very explosive fighter, good athlete, and he can fight in a variety of ways. He can actually do exchanges, which, you know, I would not recommend in this particular fight, but he's capable. Now, he has shown some vulnerability being knocked down by an opponent, by a previous opponent. Now, which is why I would say that I would not want to do a back and forth with Sam Noakes. He's a very powerful puncher. But Abdullah Mason also has tools like good footwork, and then also good hand speed, and also good foot speed to make himself very elusive. Now, Abdullah Mason at the same time can actually set traps, and what that basically means is that you can sort of have Noakes follow you around, and then based off of his body position and how he tries to come in, you can set up counterattacks. Like, for example, a very simple one is this. If you're punching a guy, you're jabbing, you're keeping him back, but he decides to try to sidestep and then aggressively move forward, you can either, if you're an orthodox fighter, you can either hit him with a good left hook, or you can hit him with a nice straight right hand, and then that is the actual trap. So you basically want to set a pattern, let your opponent try to either get too comfortable with it or feel like they figured it out, and then they literally walk into a punch or punch combinations, which is even better. So I think that if Abdullah Mason actually boxes Sam Noakes, he has a very strong chance of winning. So with that being said, this This one I think is probably going to be a lot closer than the general public thinks. Again, just because Sam Noakes is not some sort of household name does not mean that he is not a good fighter. What I would probably say is I would not be surprised if this fight ended in a draw. I would not be surprised, of course, if it ended in a split decision either. I think more or less it probably would be if both fighters do what I think they're going to do. I think it's probably going to wind up being a split decision. There may be a knockdown. But I also think that there may also be a split decision in this particular fight as well. So, I think my winner in that one, it's probably going to wind up still being Abdullah Mason. So I think Abdullah Mason actually wins this particular fight. It is going to be a very tough fight. If I think it's going to go, if it goes the way that I think it's going to go. Now, on to another fight that's actually on the card, which is going to wind up being, all right, so on to the next fight, which is going to be Jesse Bam Rodriguez, and then he's going to be fighting a gentleman by the name of Puma Martinez. And again, if you follow boxing, Puma Martinez is a familiar name. Sometimes you just can't like put his face to it, but Puma Martinez is a former 115-pound champion. I think he was IBF, if I'm not mistaken. And he has a very exciting fight style. Now, Jesse Bam Rodriguez obviously has a very exciting fight style himself. And this is probably going to be one of the more entertaining fights for however long it lasts. Now, the reason I say that is because Puma Martinez's fighting style is, while it's exciting, is sometimes very dangerous for himself. And what I mean by that is he's not always defensively responsible. And what defensive responsibility means is that you make sure that you protect yourself when you're coming in to try to throw punches, when you're actually trying to, when you're actually trying to counter someone else's punches, things of that nature. He's not always defensively responsible, and sometimes he is there to be hit. Now, what I will say is that if Puma Martinez catches Bam with a shot that he doesn't really expect, Puma Martinez has basically like a come forward punches and bunches type style, which means that he's a guy that just moves in and he throws a lot of punches and basically can try to overwhelm you with those punches. Now, what I will also say that is actually dangerous is this. The shots that he actually throws, even though he does throw a lot, and then he does throw them in spurts, he throws a lot in spurts. Those punches that he actually throws in spurts are very well placed punches. So I would probably be mindful of that. And I know that the Bam Rodriguez camp pretty much has this covered. But what I would probably wind up trying to recommend is not allow Puma Martinez's movements, because they're erratic movements. Like, he does stuff like he'll put his hands down, he'll skip around in front of the opponent, he'll raise his arms and then throw punches and stuff like that to distract you. But as long as Bam Rodriguez does not get distracted by the antics of Puma Martinez, I think that he'll be okay. Now, what I will say is that if Bam begins to box, set the tempo, and just in general frustrate Puma Martinez, he'll knock him out. Puma Martinez will he is a willing combatant. But if you make him impatient, again, he's already defensively irresponsible. So yes, he can be set up to be knocked out. So I actually would look for Jesse Bam Rodriguez to knock out Puma Martinez. I'm thinking round 6. So I think that he's probably going to walk into a straight left hand, or he just may walk into a devastating right hook, or both. He could get hit with a right hook, left hand, and then that's the end of the fight. Or, knowing Puma Martinez, he could try to jump in. Throw some sort of body attack, get caught by an uppercut, and then that's the end of the fight too. But I do have Bam Rodriguez winning this fight by either stoppage or TKO, probably in the middle rounds. Now, even though this is officially the co-main fight, I'm not gonna do this particular fight until the end of the video. I'm gonna do the main event first. Shouts out to the Queens of Boxing Talk for setting that arrangement up. I want to make sure that I cite my sources. So, with that being said, Anthony Yarde versus David Benavidez, which is the actual main event of this Ring 4 card. Okay. This is also going to be a very exciting fight for as long as it lasts. Okay. I'll cut straight to it. David Benavidez, aka the Mexican Monster, is a guy that has dazzling hand speed. He is actually very fundamentally sound. I mean, a lot of people see him throwing, punches in bunches and overwhelming guys and things of that nature, but David Benavidez is surprisingly fundamentally sound. All right, he is able to use head movement effectively. He is able to block punches effectively. He is able to counter punch effectively, which I think is going to be like a hidden factor in this particular fight. I think that even though Anthony Yarde does have some physical advantages, he is indeed the stronger puncher. Like as far as one punch power, that goes to Anthony Yarde. But I think as far as, of course, hand speed goes, there's a height reach advantage. And then Yarde may probably have the edge in footwork, but David's sense of balance, David Benavidez's sense of balance actually is a huge advantage for him, which means that, Yarde can throw some good and powerful shots, but I don't think that it's going to actually knock David Benavidez sideways or anything else like that. I think they will get his attention, but I don't think that they're really going to hurt him, is what I'm getting at. And then to Anthony Yarde, who, of course, is a very explosive athlete. Very fast hands as well. Good footwork. And he is proven to be very, at times, very durable. And he does actually have a very strong, and he's very strong-willed, obviously. But what I'm thinking about here is this. I did look at the Beterbiev fight, and then I watched, of course, over the years, I've seen all 3 Lyndon Arthur fights. Okay. So those are kind of good. Those Lyndon Arthur fights are good indicators on what he would do with a taller opponent, that has a decent jab, and then can, in spurts, throw punches and bunches as well. So he obviously did very well with that, winning 2 out of the 3 in the series. Now, it's a lot different with David Benavidez because those punches are probably going to have a lot more steam on them. They're going to be a lot faster. And then David is actually going to be just basically a better fighter. I think that a key factor for Anthony Yarde in order to win this fight would be this. If he is able to just have a methodical build up, and what I basically mean by that is just punching David like Floyd Mayweather would, just punching or using your jab to hit the midsection of David Benavidez to start the fight off with. Okay, you check his temperature is basically what it is. You just want to see how he reacts to certain things, see how aggressive he's going to be, things of that nature. So you start off by just kind of attacking the body and seeing where it goes from there. If you're Anthony Yarde, the reason that I think it's important to establish a body attack early is because more than likely David Benavidez is going to have a huge advantage when this fight actually goes the distance, or if it actually goes the distance. David Benavidez has a motor that won't stop. And then, the unfortunate fact with muscular guys like Anthony Yarde is that when you have like a lot of muscle, it requires like a lot of oxygen in order to keep functioning. So that's why that's why kind of like basketball players would probably wind up being better boxers rather than football players. Like football players, we're explosive athletes. And then we have intense waves of activity, but once those waves actually die down, that's pretty much it. Such is the case probably for this fight, which is why I think Anthony Yarde should probably start off a little bit slower and then be able to build up if he has that luxury. Now, if David Benavidez comes out full-on aggressive and is throwing punches and bunches, and you have to be able to maneuver around that and then throw punches and bunches of your own in order to just kind of keep pace, yeah, it's not really going to end well either way. Yeah, so I would think that if you're able to, if I were Anthony Yarde, and I'm sure that Tunde has probably gone over this with him, establish a good body attack. That way things could probably slow down in the middle to late rounds, and then you're able to, you may have a shot at actually just overwhelming your opponent and then convincing the judges, that you were the better fighter at night. So establish a body attack early, clinch when necessary. I think that's going to be very, very important. That way you smother his work and it does not affect you as much as it should. And then more importantly, be able to just finish strong, which, again, is probably going to be a challenge because of the muscle composition and everything else like that. But I think that Anthony Yarde's best shot to actually win this fight would be that I've already mentioned. So, of course, David Benavidez, he's a high motor guy, which just basically means he can fight all night. So, yeah, you start the pace off. It's the opposite. You start the pace off fast very early. And then you keep that pace going all fight long. And then unfortunately, you're going to wear down an opponent like Anthony Yarde. It's already, it's already definitive proof that does happen. Even with even with the Lyndon Arthur the first fight, there were spots where he effectively wore him down because he was throwing more punches. He was landing more effective shots, things of that nature. I think he either wobbled Anthony Yarde, or he may have actually knocked him down. I'm thinking that he may have wobbled him. But yeah, even in that Lyndon Arthur first fight, when he started throwing consecutive punches, it started to wear on Anthony Yarde. So I would look for that for David Benavidez. I just think that David Benavidez has the higher motor. And then, of course, he would be able to probably land the more educated shots and land those shots a whole lot. And I think that, unfortunately, it's still going to be too much for Anthony Yarde to try to overcome. I look for a late round stoppage in this one. The first round that actually comes in my head out of this 12-round fight is probably round 10. I think that Anthony Yarde actually puts on a great account for himself. I even think that some of those punches, as I mentioned before, that Yarde likes to throw, like the good overhand right, and he actually does. He actually throws a uppercut that's kind of, I would say, like mid to almost outside range. If he's able to land that and get David Benavidez's attention, that would probably be good. But yeah, I just think that David Benavidez's motor is too good, and it's eventually going to wear down Anthony Yarde, and he gets stopped. So again, 10th round, either KO or TKO for David Benavidez in the main event. Now, the fight that has basically divided fight fans. And while I'm very, very happy that this fight is actually happening, it has divided a lot of people. And that portion of it, I don't really care for. Like, I do not like it. I get, it's kind of like two football teams playing each other. Like, whenever my Steelers play Jared O'11 Green's Baltimore Ravens, we'll talk trash to each other, but we're not going to take it certain places. I don't know why I expected fight fans to do the same, but this has really caused some division, and then has had some people that shouldn't be in family business in our business yet again. So let me get on and address this particular fight, because that's what I'm here to do. I shouldn't get distracted by the other stuff. Now, what advantages Brian Norman Jr. would actually have, of course, obviously, would be power. But I think something that is actually being sorely underestimated is this: Brian Norman Jr.'s hand speed and also his footwork. Now, footwork doesn't necessarily mean how fast you can move your feet, and how agile you are. Footwork is basically, or footwork can also basically mean that you have your feet in the right position at the right moment. Even though, yes, there were times where he took some shots that he shouldn't have from Santillan, and he also took some shots that he shouldn't have from, what is the guy's name? I think it was Vera. He took some shots that he probably shouldn't have took from him too, but what I will say is that Brian Norman Jr. is very fundamentally sound. His footwork is a lot better than what people are actually mentioning. His boxing IQ is a lot better than what people want to give him credit for. I think that, like he mentioned, there are other factors rather than his power that actually make him a very dangerous opponent. And I think that, Devin is going to actually have his work cut out for him with this particular fight. Now, what I'll also go ahead and mention is this. I think that Brian Norman Jr., I think a thing that would probably be surprising to most folks would be Brian Norman Jr.'s aforementioned hand speed. I think that he's probably going to be able to get off some pretty quick pop shots on Devin Haney. And I think that also him actually being able to position himself at the right moment is going to be surprising as well. Now, what I will mention is this. I think the head movement probably needs to be a lot better with Brian Norman Jr. And I think that they probably, in some aspect, may have worked on that, especially with Devin being well known for his jab. What I'll also go ahead and mention is this. I think that Devin moving up in weight is probably going to help him. But I also think that since this is Brian Norman Jr.'s weight class, he's going to be accustomed to whatever may come. Now, since we're speaking about Devin Haney, let's go ahead and move on to his advantages. So, of course, Devin Haney, who was a former 135 undisputed champion, and I think that he did have the WBC belt at 140 at one point in time. I think that his particular advantages are obvious. Even though Brian Norman Jr.'s hand speed is surprisingly good, I think that Haney's is better. I also think that as far as foot speed goes, Devin Haney's foot speed is better than Brian Norman Jr.'s, even though Brian Norman Jr.'s foot speed is surprisingly good too. But I think his foot speed is better. I do think that the experience level is going to serve as a huge factor. I also believe that as a result, his ring IQ is probably going to help him in some tough situations with Brian Norman Jr. Honestly, obviously, I think the jab is probably going to serve him well in this particular fight because of the head movement issues of Brian Norman Jr. as well. That being said, if Devin Haney is actually able to establish his jab, I think that the fight is probably going to be relatively one-sided. If it is a situation in which, and I think a thing to actually look out for now that I'm thinking about it is this. Because Devin has moved up in weight, I think that something that may be surprising to most of these detractors out here is that I think his punch resistance is going to be a lot better. And I also think that his power is probably going to be surprisingly effective. I think that if Brian Norman Jr. is not too careful and Devin catches him with a good shot, Brian Norman Jr. has already proven that he can be knocked down. So he could actually touch the canvas if he underestimates the power of Devin Haney. So I think that's something to actually look out for as well. Also, Devin Haney's heart is sorely underestimated as well. I think that a guy like Devin doesn't have any quit in him. And I think if things get hard, he's probably going to dig deep and try to overcome. Now, what I'll also say in retrospect is that if Devin is in a situation to where he may be hurt or something of that nature, I think that he'll utilize the clinch fairly well. But I also think that if he hurts Brian Norman Jr., which I think would be surprising to most people, that he may, if he does have him, in the event that he does have him hurt, he may be able to finish him off. All right, y'all. Sorry about that. Let me just go ahead and get straight to it. With this particular fight, I actually have Brian Norman Jr. winning. And I think it'll probably be by unanimous decision. I don't think that he actually knocks Devin out, but I do think that he actually hurts him on several occasions. Now, although I've mentioned that the punch resistance would probably be a lot better, which is, of course, why I don't have Norman Jr. actually knocking him out, I think that things like his experience and, of course, his pedigree probably won't allow him to just be beat up like that. But I do think that, of course, there are going to be some rounds where he's he's going to probably wind up being effectively stunned or maybe even wobbled. So, and I think that Devin is probably going to make sure that he takes a very cautious approach. So again, I think that Brian Norman Jr. is going to be able to position himself well to not allow Devin Haney to be so elusive to where he can't get to him, like the Ramirez fight. But I do think that it is going to be a situation to where Devin is not going to get knocked out, but I think that he's going to be effectively hurt. So I got Brian Norman Jr. winning by unanimous decision in this particular fight. I know that that's not going to sit well with some of the family members, but it's just a boxing opinion, guys. I still love y'all at the end of the day. It's, again, just kind of like determining whether or not your football team is going to beat the other guy's football team, and that's all that is to me. But, I actually do like both guys. I obviously have met Bill Haney in person twice, and then from most of what Brian Norman Sr. actually presents, and then more importantly, who Brian Norman Jr. actually is, and what he's actually presented. I think that Brian Norman Jr. is a high character guy, and I think that he would be great for boxing. So, I would encourage that type of guy to be uplifted as well. But that's just my boxing opinion, y'all. That's all it is. Well, all right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to the 20 by 20 series of It's Just Me, hosted by Brent Fox. I'll see y'all next time.